Hello everybody and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program, where I've made a couple of modifications to our rescue fuel craft here. I've added a TD12 decoupler up top. I also added a reaction wheel because I realized that the Octo 2 doesn't have a built-in reaction wheel, so that has been added in here. You'll also notice I added another stage of fuel here, which is going to be potentially spicy with our liftoff. We'll see what that feels like. And this decoupler is in definitely the wrong place. So this decoupler goes here. These two decouplers would actually split out and would go here. And then these engines here would be merged together. There we go. So that looks correct. And then this decoupler would be merged together here. And then this decoupler up top, in theory, is never going to get utilized. We're going to use that for Kerbal construction. So I'm very concerned right now about our thrust to weight in this stage. So we can see we're at 1.48. If we take this up to, say, around 75 on the thrust limiter, that brings us up to 1.61. But we know that this fuel here drains slower than these hammers do. So what we actually want to do is we want to thrust limit these more, not less, which is a weird thing to say when our thrust is too low, but we're going to do something like this, which, yes, also means we're going to be draining less fuel here, but we'll be able to burn this longer. And then we'll take this down to, I don't know, maybe like 50%? What's that at? 1.37. That's a low thrust to weight, but I think I'm going to accept that. Okay, let's go ahead and save this and put this out on the pad. And we are just about ready to get this thing up there and to rescue our Kerbals. Now, the reason why I added a second stage here is because I'm just concerned that once we get this vehicle into orbit and into the same orbit as our current craft, that we're just not going to have a lot of DV. So I wanted to add this in here, which did necessitate some additional fuel in this bottom stage. So that should be fine. I'm noticing some distinct wiggling here. We'll see if that's a problem, but yeah, that's definitely significant. Let's see what happens after we start flying this. This is a test flight. This is revertible. So this is definitely a potential issue. We'll keep an eye on that. Once we start actually flying, it doesn't seem to be that big of an issue at this time. Okay, so that looks good. I'm looking at the drain rate of our solid fuel boosters compared to the drain rate of the fuel tank here, and it's a lot faster. So we'll watch the thrust to weight once these SRBs run out. That's the main concern right now, is what is our thrust to weight going to look like? We know it wasn't great before. So we might have to take these over to being fully liquid fueled. That'll be more expensive. I would prefer to keep it a bit more like this. We'll see how that feels. So we're about to burn out our SRBs here. Okay, so the SRBs are burnt out. 0.74 on that thrust to weight at that point. That's bad. That's really quite bad. So that's a really, really, really low thrust to weight. I'm looking at our time to apoapsis here. It's currently holding. Okay, it's going down very slowly. So that's what we expect when our thrust to weight is this low. You can see we are decreasing speed. But we should start increasing speed eventually. The main issue here is just this swivel engine is a little too weak to lift this level of weight. We will run out of fuel in these side tanks eventually. Now, one thing we could do is we could just add a decoupler here and just drop the weight of these hammers. And that's probably a good thing to do, actually. So the hammers would then... So what we would do is, well, the hammers are where we're attached on the radial decoupler. So we'll have to change our radial decoupler here, our radial decoupler attachment. So that would end up being attached at the fuel tank now, instead of at the hammer. So that would be, and we'd need this in quad. Okay, we're gonna have to redo the struts and redo the fuel lines. That's okay. And then we would put a TD12 decoupler here. So keep in mind, even when dry, these are relatively heavy, I think. Let's check in on that, actually. What is the dry mass of a Hammer solid fuel booster? So the fuel itself is 2.81 tons. And the overall vehicle, or the overall part mass, is not in here? Awkward. Well, it does have some dry mass. We know that for a fact. So we can boost up our thrust to weight by just dropping this. And that will significantly help matters. So I want to move up this radial decoupler, and I mean, that's kind of making a mess of the other parts here. Let's just go ahead and do this, and then go ahead and do this. There we go. That'll be a little bit better. And now we can have this happen here, and then we would drop these tanks once they're dry. That's the overall concept anyway. So at this point, that should significantly improve our thrust to weight. I don't believe that that's necessarily going to completely fix the thrust to weight issue. I want to be clear about that. That engine is still going to be pretty weak for this, but it would probably be sufficient to get us into orbit. Now, that last run probably would have still made it into orbit, but I think it would have costed a lot of extra DV that we didn't really want to spend on that, is the thing. So, the SRBs are, of course, going to bring ourselves, and we'll just lock to surface up for now. The SRBs are going to accelerate us up a decent amount, and they will run out of fuel eventually. And then these strap-on tanks are now essentially separate. So, the dry mass of this hammer is not insignificant, so we're going to get rid of that soon enough. So 10 seconds until the SRBs are burnt out. And watch this thrust to weight number here. So 210.73. We ditch those, and it's now 0.84. So, like I said, it's not perfect by any means. It is definitely imperfect. Our thrust to weight is 0.9. However, I'm wondering at this point what our time to apoapsis is looking like. It's a little higher. It's still going down, which we expect with our thrust to weight being this low. So we see that apoapsis still increasing here. And this should be holding at this time and just about ready to tick over into increasing. Now it should be increasing. And we'll just keep burning here for a little bit, probably until these drop tanks are burnt out, which will be a thrust to weight of like 1.28 or something like that. Now, we are accelerating, but this is still very, very weak, and that's understood. This is not ideal, but this is a one-off design. I'm not expecting to have to do this in the future. Okay, so the apoapsis is hitting about 30. I want to put us over at orbital prograde at this point. And time to apoapsis is likely going to... It's still going up. It's going up slowly. Okay. We can drop those tanks. They are empty. So we'll get rid of that dead weight. We do not need to hold that. And we can see our thrust to weight is now 1.36. Time to apoapsis is 34 seconds and holding. 35. Okay, so it's increasing. That looks good. But this first stage is pretty underpowered. The reason why I wanted to go with an underpowered stage for this is because it's cheap. It's very cheap. So that should be absolutely fine. We should have no issue there. We're up to 1.53, 1.54 thrust to weight. This should get us up into orbit nicely. We can see our apoapsis is currently about 45 kilometers. We're going to need to have that go up a little bit further, for sure. Oh, I switched this over to a Pug engine. The Terrier engine is down here. This is now a Pug. Just want to be clear about that. Okay, so we're at 53 seconds of burn time left here. I'm looking at our apoapsis here, and time to apoapsis is actually ticking down at this moment. So that's not necessarily ideal. I'm going to keep holding prograde for right now. Our thrust to weight is pretty high at this point, 1.91. So we're going to keep building up a bunch of mostly horizontal speed. This just indicates that we have a bit of a lack of vertical speed, which is not terribly surprising. But yeah, see right here, it's going back up now. So that indicates that this was indeed the correct call to just hold the course. Let's ditch our fairing. We're high enough up for that now. So we no longer need to hold that weight. And then the real question is, once we switch over to our next stage, is that going to be enough thrust to weight to get us to orbit? That's the question. We need to burn right now. So as you can see here, yes, this does get us to orbit. Time to apoapsis is increasing. That looks good. Okay, so we are absolutely fine. Thrust to weight here, even within the atmosphere, is actually 1.02. So that's pretty decent. I do not mind that. 65 kilometer apoapsis. We're just going to take this up to around a 100 kilometer apoapsis. I'm not targeting too much in terms of altitude here. We're going to have to do a lot of altitude matching, but this is fine for now. So you can see we're at about 100 kilometer apoapsis. I've shut down the engine. We still have some atmospheric drag here. We might need to feather the engine a little bit here. Yeah, I'm just going to push us back up to 101. There we go. And we'll just hold there for now. That should be good. So at the apoapsis here, we can just get ourselves a little bit of a burn and get ourselves into orbit here. Just squeaking ourselves right into orbit. Hang on. There we go, right about there. So that looks good. You can see that we're still dropping a little bit. We're not quite going to be at 100 kilometer orbit. That's okay. I don't actually mind that. We're still within the atmosphere at this point. Just bringing us up a little bit here. And you can see that's increasing the amount of DV that we're going to need here. But I just want to hold us at 100 kilometer orbit. Okay. So we're currently up to almost 70 kilometers altitude. I do want to move us over to that node. At this point, drag is very, very minimal. So that looks fine. Yeah, you can see here, we're barely dropping our apoapsis. So that looks great. We've just got a little bit more until we're in vacuum of space here. About 800 meters. And 200, 100, and there we are in space. Cool. We'll extend out our solar panels, and let's warp on over to this circularization. So that looks good. 57.2 meters per second to get us into space. So that is wonderful. And then we see 3,200 meters per second up here. It's going to be less than that in reality, but that's okay. That should be plenty. So we've got about 40 seconds, 30, 20, 10, and 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, mark. Okay. So that should be good enough. We'll just put this on kill rot. Looks good. And at this point, we need to match planes with our Lunar Lander. So this is going to be over at the ascending node, looks like, 6.5 degrees. So that'll be a couple hundred of DV. So that'll be something like this. Little less than that. Yeah, about like that. 254.9 looks good. Let's go ahead and rotate our way on over. This gyroscope is peppy. No doubt about it. It's an eager little beaver. We could turn down the wheel authority, but to be honest, it's fine. I'm completely okay with it. Okay, so let's head over to that node, and we'll get our inclination change. So we're in a fairly low orbit here. This means that we're going to have a lot of flexibility on when we go for the intercept, and that'll be absolutely fine. So we're currently 50 seconds, 40, 30, 20, 10, and 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, mark. Okay, commencing burn. So we're about 200 meters per second here, and then we can get our intercept set up. We'll have to orbit a number of times in order to get the correct intercept timing. So that'll be absolutely fine. No major issue there. Okay, about 2.8 meters per second. Let's hit the last little bit of this. That'll do. Excellent. So now we are at 0.0 on the node. That looks great. And ideally, we'd like to intercept this thing about at the periapsis. Now, the timing may not work out for that, but this would be what we would be angling for. Now, this is obviously not the correct timing. We would be here when this would be here. So we're going to have to wait and do this after several orbits. I'm actually going to do this in here. This button's easier to click in 4K, so when we do it here, it can be hard to highlight this button, but this one works fine. So we're going to add in a few orbits here. And we can see each and every orbit, it gets closer. Ooh, that's quite close there. I think that's going to be one more we'll overshoot. Yeah. So I think this is the best that we're going to get. So we're going to have to adjust our timing here and go a little bit more prograde. What's that looking like? 9 kilometers of separation. So 677.3 meters per second there for relative speed. That's a lot of relative speed. No doubt about that. But we can dial in that separation a little bit. So that looks fine. Let's go ahead and head over to that node. And this is going to burn out this entire stage. So we're going to be on this fuel at that point. Okay, so I'm definitely glad I added this fuel in. But that first stage was still too weak. We should probably, if we're going to... Oh, okay, that's going to get all flashy. My apologies. Okay, if we're going to do this more in the future, then we should probably adjust that first stage. That's the core issue there. So at this point, we're about 50 seconds away. Now 40, 30, 20, 10, and 3, 2, 1, 0 mark. Okay, lighting up that engine, and off we go. So this is all looking good, and we'll just rendezvous right up over here. That's a 9-kilometer separation right now, so we can definitely dial that in once we get to, like, here or so. We're going to have to be pretty close. And we might overshoot, because this is a lot of relative speed differential. I'm wondering if we should just burn at that intersect to get the relative speed differential down and then do a get closer burn. That's probably the right way to handle this. Well, let's burn out this entire stage. Just about there. There we go. And we'll light up this little pug. And we'll get this last little bit burnt here. Okay. Whoa, that gyroscope is peppy. It's even peppier now that we have way less weight on this thing. Okay, so this is currently a 9.1 kilometer separation. So normally what I'd try to do is dial this in and then go for the braking burn. And keep in mind, braking burn is relative to the other vehicle. This is actually going to be making us go faster, but relative to the other vehicle, it's going to make us go slower. So that would be maybe sometime around here or so. Let's add a maneuver there. And this is basically going to be a prograde burn, right? Now that's going to significantly change our separation here. And that's absolutely understood. But you can see that that relative speed is going down by a lot. And this separation is quite significant at this moment. If we were to move this to be... Ooh, hang on. This is actually pretty decent timing. This is not very far apart and decent relative speeds to work with. This is a good step here. Okay, let's go ahead and lock to that node. And let's prepare for that. So off we go. And I don't know where our target vehicle is right now. Haven't seen it yet. Oh, there it is. Currently about 100 kilometers away. So that's not too bad. And we're going to commence this burn shortly. Here in about 50 seconds. And let's warp forward a little bit. 40 seconds. 30, 20, 10, and 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0 mark. Okay, so this is basically a target retrograde burn at this point. This is a braking burn from the perspective of the target, but a prograde orbit increasing burn from the perspective of Kerbal. It's a little mind-bending, but it's all about relativity, right? So we're just decreasing our target velocity at this point by burning prograde. It's kind of wacky, but here we are. So we're about 30 kilometers away right now, and we're just continually decreasing this. You can see that this is also going to want to push this node together here, and we're going to do that as we finish up this burn. But I don't know if this is the timing for that. But that is where this is going to want to go. So pushing these two nodes together is good. The only question is when. So we've got about 200 meters per second left to go here. We are slowing down our relative velocities nicely, and you can see that's definitely having an effect here as well. These nodes are pushing together. I'm going to cut the throttle, not when this is over. In fact, I'm going to put us in kill rot, but I'm going to cut the throttle now. Little further, actually. Little further. Now. 12.8 meters per second. This is okay. So we're currently traveling at a relative speed of 39 meters per second. And this is actually 0.9 kilometers here. So we should just warp forward a little bit, probably to about the periapsis here. So let's go ahead and warp here. And you can see we're still getting closer together. That looks good. And, oh, this reaction wheel is sensitive. Okay, let's turn down that wheel authority to like 40%. That's a little bit better. Okay, I'm going to do a bit of a burn here. You'll note we're still reducing our relative speed, but I'm burning up this way as a corrective burn to push these two nodes together. There. How's that looking? 0.0? Okay, we'll move into target retrograde at this point. 33.1 meters per second. We may be on a collision course at this point. 1.3, or rather 1 minute 30 seconds on that encounter. So I'm not going to do a braking burn yet. We know that we've got pretty decent thrust to weight, but we're going to want to start slowing this down soon enough. Okay, let's warp in a little further to maybe not even warping, to be honest. 1 minute 10 seconds. We can now see the Lunar Lander, and this feels like an impact trajectory to me. Let's warp in a teeny tiny bit. We're about 1.5 kilometers away. This may not quite be an impact trajectory, but it's going to be close. It's going to be really, really close. I'm commencing a burn to slow us down a little bit. Yeah, I don't think it's quite an impact trajectory, but let's bring this down to somewhere around 5 meters per second of relative speed. Okay, that's about 5 meters per second there. All we want to do is park this thing next to that thing. That's all we got to do here. So, we're about 300 meters out and continuing to head in. You can see we're drifting apart on these nodes a little bit. That indicates that we're not quite on an impact trajectory. We're very close. I'm going to rotate us here so that our solar panels are kind of parallel to the other craft, just in case, but I don't think that that's going to cause an issue. We're about 200 meters away right now. It's tumbling? Or is it just changing over to... It's just changing its orientation. Okay, it's probably set to retrograde at this point. Okay, so we're about 100 meters away at this point, and I would like to make a bit of an alteration to our trajectory here. So you can see we are just pushing the nodes a little bit more together, like that, and also bringing ourselves down to about 1 meter per second of relative speed. So we're still not necessarily exactly on a collision course, but we are basically in an identical orbit at this point. Very, very close to an identical orbit. So that looks good. This is the direction that we are heading here. So what is our closest distance going to be? Well, this is going to say 0.0, which is not actually useful. The real question is, how close are we going to get before we pass over this? And I think we're going to be within like 10 or 20 meters. Definitely 20. So that seems good. So all we got to do is we got to park in position where we can just grab these parts, slap them on here, and hope that the decoupler actually works correctly. that would be ideal. I'm going to drop our relative speed down a bit. We're down to 0.2 meters per second right now. Okay. So far, so good. We are going to miss this a little bit. We are currently within 11 meters of the capsule. I'm going to just bring us right on down to 0.0. Okay, this is good enough. So that looks good. We're going to put ourselves in kill rot. I actually want to point at the target, like so. So 7.5 meters. That looks good. Okay, and now we are parked here and ready for some Kerbal construction. So that will be in the next episode. You can leave your offerings to the engagement gods in the form of likes, comments, subscribes, and bell ringings, and a very special thank you to all of the channel members for making this video possible, including ALS Gamer, Dark Horse, Ethan Feldman, Upper Cumberland Gamers, Nick Smarty, Dimitri H, Punching the Microphone, The Lounge STL, and all the rest. And of course, you. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to support the channel, you can click the join button down below the video, and as always, I will see you all next time.